It often starts with something so small you can't even name it. A pause in someone's smile. A silence that comes too quickly after you speak. The way a room feels just a little colder when you walk in, even though the lights are on and the laughter is loud. It's in those moments, the ones you try to brush off, that something ancient inside you begins to stir. It's not paranoia. It's perception. A kind of knowing that doesn't speak in words, but in texture. The weight of a glance, the friction in a handshake, the tiny tug at your chest when someone says your name but doesn't mean it with their whole heart. That ache you feel, that quiet flutter. It's the soul's radar, finely tuned by years of surviving the unspoken, the overlooked, the almosts. We live in a world where many people wear masks so well, even they forget what's beneath. Smiles that feel warm, but only skin deep. Words that sound supportive, but never quite land. You're not imagining it. You're encountering something very real, covert hostility hidden beneath civility. And for those of us who are sensitive, who sense too much, and often say too little, it's a kind of slow erosion. It doesn't strike like a storm. It seeps like fog. There was a time I worked with someone who always praised me, but somehow I left every conversation feeling smaller. He would start with compliments, how articulate I was, how I had a gift for presenting, but by the end of our chats, there would be a correction, a joke, a warning wrapped in concern. Don't outshine the team too much. You're great, just don't let it get to your head. Each remark was soft, polite, perfectly delivered, but my energy kept shrinking. That's what makes covert hatred so devastating. It doesn't attack. It whispers. It doesn't push you out. It makes you second guess whether you belong. And in a culture that rewards politeness over authenticity, it can take years to realize how deeply you've been affected. And here's the quiet truth. Most covert haters don't know they're doing it. They've buried their resentment under layers of likability, performance, and insecurity. They are afraid of being seen as less, and your growth threatens that fragile illusion. Your progress, your light, your joy. It activates the shadow they've refused to face. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow self, the parts of us we repress, deny, or disown. When someone hasn't faced their own shame or envy, they project it onto others. Not openly, that would require honesty. Instead, it leaks out through sarcasm, forgetfulness, interruptions, and backhanded praise. They don't confront. They erode. They don't stab. They smile. You've probably felt it before. You share good news, and there's a flicker in their eyes before the smile. A heartbeat too long. Then they recover. That's amazing, they say, but their tone shrinks as if they're squeezing celebration through clenched teeth. Or they immediately pivot to themselves, as if your win must be matched, even one-upped. It's subtle, but your nervous system catches it every time. These are not bad people, but they are people who haven't learned how to sit with their own shadows. So they turn your light into their discomfort and make you feel like you're somehow too much, too loud, too lucky. And you start dimming, not because you're weak, but because you're kind, because you don't want to be a burden, because it's easier to shrink than to confront. But let me say this clearly. You don't have to trade your light for someone else's comfort. There's another story I remember. A friend I had known for over a decade, someone I shared birthdays, breakups, and deep conversations with. But over time, I noticed the pattern. Every joy I brought to her felt like a threat. I got a new job, and she barely smiled. I started healing from old wounds, and she changed the subject. But when I was sad, confused, or doubting myself, she showed up fully. That was when she felt safe. When I was small, it took me years to see it, years to name it, because I loved her, because I believed her heart was good, and maybe it was. But love does not excuse patterns that drain your spirit. Some people only know how to love you when you are broken, because they haven't yet loved themselves enough to handle your wholeness. This is not about judgment. It's about discernment, about noticing what your body has been trying to tell you all along. That tightness in your throat when you're around them, the exhaustion after a simple lunch, the way you replay the conversation later, wondering if you imagined it. You didn't. Discernment isn't cynicism, it's clarity. It's the gift of noticing and acting on what you notice without shame. The good news is this: you don't need to declare war. You don't need to call them out or cut them off. You simply need to reclaim your energy, one choice at a time. Boundaries don't always need to be spoken. Sometimes they begin with shorter replies, slower invitations, less emotional exposure, like turning a dimmer switch slowly until the glare fades, because what you're doing is sacred. You're no longer asking your nervous system to tolerate people who only clap when you fall. You're listening, not just with your ears, but with your soul. And as you do, something inside begins to shift. The weight you've carried of being polite, likable, easygoing, it begins to lift. You remember that it's not your job to manage someone else's envy. It's your job to shine anyway. And the moment you begin to shine again, unapologetically, without shrinking, something beautiful and also painful happens. You start to see people for who they really are, not who they pretend to be, not who you hoped they were, but who they've always shown you in glimpses behind the pleasantries. And it hurts, because you realize how much of yourself you gave to people who only offered just enough to keep you close, but never deep. You remember every time you excused the snide comment, the forgotten invitation, the hollow praise. You see clearly now that what you called friendship was sometimes just proximity. And that's a grief no one talks about, mourning the relationship you thought you had, not the one that actually existed. But don't let that clarity harden you. Let it soften you into truth. Let it lead you inward to the part of you that has always known what genuine love feels like, because you felt it before. Maybe it was a teacher who saw your potential before you did, or a cousin who never made your silence feel awkward, or even a stranger who offered kindness without expectation. Those moments stay, don't they? Like warm stones in your pocket, proof that safe connection is possible. This is what healing asks of you now: to notice the difference, to stop mistaking politeness for presence, helpfulness for loyalty, consistency for love. Sometimes, the people who show up with the biggest smiles are also the ones who can't stand the parts of you that no longer need their approval. And when you stop needing, when you truly stop performing for affection, their discomfort becomes obvious. But here's the miracle: you don't need to perform anymore. You don't need to chase closeness by dimming your joy, or by minimizing your voice, or by folding yourself into the background just to keep the peace. Because peace bought with self-betrayal is not peace. It's silence wearing a mask. So what do? You begin to listen, not to the words, but to the energy behind them. You begin to track how you feel, not how they say you should feel. And slowly, you let your body become your compass again. You'll notice the micro freezes, that half-second pause before they respond to your news. You'll feel the weight in their congratulations, the way it lands like a chore rather than a celebration. You'll hear the way they say your name, how it's dipped in sarcasm or smoothed out too perfectly, like they're afraid of letting the truth slip through. And again, you'll be tempted to dismiss it, to rationalize it, to say, maybe I'm overreacting. But you're not. You're just learning to trust the messages your body has been whispering for years. One listener wrote to me once. She told me about her mother, how her mom never raised her voice, never called her names, never criticized her directly, but every compliment was conditional. Every success was met with a reminder of someone who did it better. Every vulnerable share was twisted, reused as ammunition weeks later. She smiles, the listener wrote, but I always feel colder around her than anyone else. And that is the subtle violence of covert hatred. It leaves no bruises, just doubt. And that doubt grows roots in your self-worth, until one day you can't tell if the voice in your head is yours or just an echo of someone who only loved the version of you they could manage. But we are not here to be manageable. We are here to be whole. So breathe. Not the shallow kind of breath you take when you're trying to hold it all together, but the deep, slow kind, the kind that drops your shoulders and brings you home. Because here's what I want you to remember. You don't have to fight covert hate with confrontation. You don't have to match their energy. You don't even need to explain. You only need to choose. Where will your time, your tenderness, your truth go next? Imagine your energy like a currency. Would you spend it on people who mock your dreams behind grins, who ghost your joy but haunt your struggle? Or would you invest it quietly, lovingly, into the ones who clap the loudest when you heal? Let yourself grieve the ones who can't meet you anymore, and let that grief become a teacher, not a chain. Because grief, when held with gentleness, becomes wisdom. It teaches you where your soul felt most unseen and how to never abandon yourself that way again. And when the anger comes, because it will, don't push it away. Let it speak, not to destroy, but to direct. Anger is not always hatred. Sometimes it's just truth burning for air. Let it guide you to what matters. Let it tell you, in no uncertain terms, I deserve better. And then, without needing to shout, without needing to prove, you walk differently. Lighter, clearer. The first time you decline their invitation without guilt, that's healing. The first time you don't over-explain your boundary, that's healing. The first time you celebrate yourself out loud, knowing full well who might be watching, and you do it anyway, that's freedom. And slowly, the landscape of your life begins to shift. The conversations deepen. The laughter becomes fuller, not louder. The days feel quieter, but never lonely. You spend less time rehearsing your reactions and more time simply being. You are no longer performing for people who never truly clapped. You're dancing for your own joy now. And in that joy, you will begin to attract a different kind of soul, one who isn't confused by your confidence but drawn to it. One who isn't threatened by your light but warmed by it. Because love, in its truest form, is not jealous. It is expansive. It multiplies. And so will you. You start noticing it in small, unexpected ways. The way your breath feels a little more honest in certain rooms. The way your spine stays straighter, not because you're performing, but because you're no longer apologizing for taking up space. The way silence becomes a comfort, not a warning. It's strange, isn't it? How healing doesn't announce itself with grand victories, but instead with the absence of dread, with the quiet moments where you no longer feel the need to shrink, defend, or explain. That's how you know you're getting closer to yourself. One morning, you're making tea, and you realize you haven't rehearsed a fake conversation in your head in days. You haven't scanned your past for clues or edited your memories to justify someone else's bad behavior. You've simply been here in your body, in your breath, in your own life. This is what freedom feels like. Not a loud declaration, but a deep exhale. Because when you stop orbiting people who thrive on confusion, the fog lifts. And what's left is clarity, the kind that doesn't ask for permission. You begin to organize your world with more intention. The books you keep on your shelf aren't just there to impress anyone. They mean something to you. The clothes you wear feel like they belong to your present self, not the self you had to become to survive someone else's gaze. You start asking different questions. Does this relationship energize me or drain me? Does this conversation expand me or reduce me? Does this version of me feel like home or like camouflage? These are not selfish questions. They're sacred, because when you stop asking them, that's when the shadows creep in. And yes, you will lose people. Some will drift away when you stop over-explaining your boundaries. Others will pull back when they realize their subtle dominance no longer works on you. And still others, the covert haters, will resent that their mask no longer fools you. Let them. Let the silence between you widen. Not because you hate them, but because you no longer abandon yourself to keep their comfort intact. And here's the truth. If your growth ruins the relationship, it wasn't a relationship. It was a performance. And you were always the only one on stage. But now you step down. You walk off the set. You drop the script. And you begin writing something real. Something rooted in mutual care, mutual respect, and mutual presence. You'll find that not everyone needs to be confronted. Some people only need to be released. Gently, quietly, and completely. And when you do, something magical happens. You create space for friendships that nourish you, for conversations that don't leave you questioning your worth, for mornings that begin without tension, for nights where your thoughts no longer spiral around invisible wounds. There's something sacred about solitude when it's chosen, not imposed. When it becomes a sanctuary, not a sentence. You begin to understand that loneliness isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of truth in your connections. And once you taste truth, you'd rather be alone than be with those who lie with smiles. You may still miss them. That's okay. Missing someone doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means you were open. It means you hoped. It means your heart worked. And that is never something to regret. But don't confuse missing with needing. You can miss someone and still know that their presence cost you too much. You can miss the memories without inviting back the pain, and slowly that ache will soften. It will become less about them and more about the parts of you that once needed their approval to feel whole. Because that's the deepest betrayal. Covert hatred creates not what others did to us, but what we began doing to ourselves to earn their conditional love. We hid. We shrank. We second-guessed. We smiled through what hurt, but not anymore. Now you listen differently. You feel your feet on the ground when you speak. You let yourself laugh without checking the room. You let your voice rise without apology. And when the old ghosts return, the doubting voice, the twinge of guilt, the fear of being too much, you breathe. You welcome them in, like old travelers with weathered stories. You hear them, and then you let them pass, because they are not the authors of your life anymore. You are. One listener told me about how for years she muted her brightness just to stay acceptable to a group of friends who never celebrated her out loud. The day she stopped shrinking, she lost them all, but gain something far greater, her own voice. And not the polite, curated one, the full, messy, radiant one. She said it was like coming home to a house I forgot I built. That's what this process is, a return, a remembering, not becoming someone new, but finally removing everything that kept you from being who you've always been underneath. You begin to realize that clarity is worth the loneliness it might bring. That truth is worth the peace it restores. That boundaries are not walls, but invitations for the right people to meet you where you truly are. And when they do, you'll feel it. The safety, the ease, the joy that doesn't feel rehearsed, but real. The way their love doesn't echo through hollow compliments, but shows up in presence, consistency, and light. You'll feel your nervous system relax in their company, and you'll know this is what connection was always meant to feel like. And here's the part no one tells you: when you stop seeking validation in the wrong places, you begin to live differently. Not louder, not harder, just more honestly. You walk into rooms, not to be seen, but to be present. You speak not to impress, but to express. And when you fall silent, it's not out of fear, but because silence finally feels like peace, not punishment. Your old self, the one who constantly scanned for approval, for acceptance, for belonging, that self doesn't disappear. It evolves. It puts down the weight it was never meant to carry. And it steps aside so that something older, wiser, and truer can take its place. This is the self that listens to the body's whisper before the mind's noise. This is the self that knows when no is a sacred act of love. This is the self that doesn't chase affection because it's too busy creating resonance. And in this space, something else awakens your joy, not the performative kind, not the one used to prove you're okay, but the real kind, the quiet joy that rises in your chest when you're reading a book you love, walking barefoot in the grass, laughing with someone who truly sees you. Joy that doesn't need to be posted, polished, or praised, just felt. And when the world still demands your performance, as it will, you'll pause, take a breath, and remember, I am not here to entertain your comfort at the cost of my truth. There's a story one listener shared with me. She had always been the reliable one, the peacekeeper, the one who never caused waves. But inside, she was drowning, smiling through discomfort, apologizing for having needs, staying silent when sarcasm stung. Until one day, she just stopped. She didn't explain. She didn't fight. She just stopped performing, and everything changed. Some people left, some stayed but grew distant. But new people entered, soft-spoken, deeply present, and safe. People who met her in stillness and loved her in truth. She said, I thought I would be lonelier, but I've never felt more surrounded, not by noise, but by realness. That's the gift of letting go. It's not a vacuum, it's a clearing. And into that clearing comes the kind of love you always deserved, but could never receive while you were busy earning it. Love that doesn't need you to shrink, to soften, to pretend. Love that doesn't turn your wins into threats or your vulnerability into leverage. Love that sits quietly beside you on hard days and laughs loudly with you on light ones. And when you find this kind of connection, even if it's just one person, it rewrites your internal script. You stop expecting betrayal in every compliment. You stop rehearsing every sentence before speaking. You stop questioning whether you're too much, because now you know those who find you too much are simply not enough for you. And that's not arrogance, that's clarity. A clarity that only comes after you've been broken by the slow drip of hidden hostility and chosen to rebuild with bricks made of self-respect. This doesn't mean you won't ever encounter covert hate again. You will, but it will no longer enter you. It may pass by, it may linger near, but you've changed the locks. You've shifted the vibration. You'll feel it, the off-key tone, the sideways glance, and instead of absorbing it, you'll observe it. And then you'll choose something better, not out of spite, but out of reverence for your spirit. Because when you've spent years being silently wounded, you learn that your peace is not negotiable. You'll begin to see this discernment as an art, not a defense mechanism. A way of living that honors your nervous system, your time, your soul, and your life will begin to mirror this new alignment. Your calendar won't be full of obligations, but of intentions. Your space won't be cluttered with proof of your worth, but filled with what breathes life into you. Your friendships will shift fewer, maybe but deeper. More laughter, more stillness, more truth. Even your dreams change. You stop chasing validation and start cultivating meaning. You begin asking, what would I do if no one clapped? And when the answer still feels right, you know you're home. This is the landscape of healing. It's not glamorous. It's not loud, but it is sacred. And every day you choose it, your soul grows a little quieter and a lot stronger. There will be relapses, old patterns, familiar longings, times when you wonder if shrinking again might make things easier. But remember, ease is not always peace, and returning to what hurt is not the same as forgiveness. You are allowed to outgrow who they still want you to be. You are allowed to feel joy even if someone else is uncomfortable with your light. You are allowed to walk away from people who only loved you in pieces. And most of all, you are allowed to love yourself fully, unflinchingly, and without conditions. The healing journey is not linear. It loops. It spirals. It breaks you open and then stitches you back together with new thread. But with each pass, you carry more truth, more compassion, more quiet strength. And as you sit now, maybe in your car, or at your desk, or curled beneath blankets, know this: you are not wrong for feeling too much. You are not broken for noticing what others ignore. You are not weak for needing peace. You are a lantern in a world of shadows. And your light, no matter how flickering or small it sometimes feels, it matters. So protect it, not by hiding, but by choosing where and with whom you let it shine. And as you rise from this reflection, carry this knowing with you. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be real. You are not here to perform. You are here to live. And you are not here to fix others. You are here to remember yourself. So go softly, go bravely, go as you are, and trust deeply that those meant for you will recognize the language your soul speaks. Because it is the language of truth, and truth once spoken never forgets how to echo.